Today on the Matt Walsh Show, Trump's strategy of accomplishing 10 things a day every day has the left scrambling to catch up, but always one step behind. Now Trump has announced a plan to take control of the Gaza Strip, but is that what he really wants to do, or does he have something else in mind? We'll discuss. Also, a Democrat congresswoman lashes out with a vicious racist attack against white men. Of course, she'll suffer no consequences for it whatsoever. Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady have teamed up to bravely campaign against hate, and noted genius AOC says that Elon Musk, the most successful man in the world, is actually a moron. We'll talk about all that and more today on the Matt Walsh Show. I have some exciting news for our Daily Wire Plus members. We will be bringing back the members-only segment of the show where I answer your questions. That'll start tomorrow. If you're not a member, head to dailywire.com/subscribe to become one now. Being a husband, father, host of my own show means life never slows down. Imagine trying to eat 31 different fruits and vegetables every day. Sounds miserable and time-consuming. But with Balance of Nature fruits and veggies, there's never been a more convenient dietary supplement to ensure that you get a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every day with 31 different whole fruits and vegetable ingredients. Balance of Nature takes fruits and vegetables and they freeze dry them, turn them into a powder, and then put them in a capsule. You take your fruit and veggie capsules every day. Your body knows what to do with them. Go to balanceofnature.com. Use promo code Walsh for 35% off your first order as a preferred customer. Plus, get a free bottle of fiber and spice. That's balanceofnature.com. Promo code Walsh. There was a report the other day that according to J.D. Vance, Donald Trump has been, quote, constantly asking us how many days we have left. So in other words, there's a sense in this second Trump administration that time is of the essence. They want to accomplish something every day while they still have the opportunity, especially for somebody like Trump. The logic makes a lot of sense. More than any other president, he's aware that nothing is guaranteed. He's well aware of the risk of assassination for obvious reasons. In fact, just yesterday, Trump discussed how the U.S. would retaliate if, hypothetically, Iran were to follow through on its threats and assassinate him while he's in office. And he said, by the way, that Iran would be completely wiped off the map, which is the right answer. Now, there are other reasons why Trump probably wants to move quickly as well. You may remember the first impeachment trial. Democrats engineered the whole narrative because Trump merely floated the possibility of cutting aid to Ukraine. They sensed weakness and hesitation, and they exploited it. That's why this time around, Trump is not simply discussing the possibility of slashing foreign aid. Instead, he's just going ahead and doing it. Trump is eliminating billions of dollars in aid and then closing the agency responsible for it all in a matter of days. And as we talked about yesterday, he's actually locking the bureaucrats out of the building so that they can't keep distributing the money. This is a blitzkrieg-style approach that nobody on the left has any idea how to handle. None of them were expecting this. The Trump administration is securing near instantaneous results, and he's doing it so quickly that in some cases, corporate media outlets are having to reverse their own reporting in a matter of minutes. So here, for example, was the scene on MSNBC the other day as recorded by the media team at Town Hall. And I'm going to play two clips that are 40 minutes apart. See if you can spot the difference.
Good morning. It's 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 a.m. Pacific. I'm Ana Cabrera reporting from New York. Let's begin with breaking news in Donald Trump's trade war. Stocks opening down sharply this morning. You see the Dow, S&P, and NASDAQ all in the red by several hundred. And we expect the president of Mexico to announce her country's response any moment now to the tariffs President Trump slapped on Mexico, Canada, and China over the weekend. Breaking news involving the new Trump tariffs. Just moments ago, Mexico's president said they have reached a deal to pause those new U.S. tariffs by a month.
First to the social media posting from the Mexican president, Claudia Sheinbaum. She just said that Mexico will send 10,000 members of its National Guard to its border with the United States to prevent the flow of fentanyl into the U.S.
In the span of less than an hour, MSNBC went from dire warnings about how Donald Trump's trade war was tanking the stock market to announcing that actually there was no trade war and that Mexico is now going to send thousands of troops to stop the flow of fentanyl into this country, which is a drug that, of course, has killed tens of thousands of Americans, kills tens of thousands of Americans every year. Now, if there's anyone left watching MSNBC who's capable of any kind of independent thought, or if there's anyone left watching MSNBC at all, this had to be a very jarring moment. But this is what Democrats in the media have to contend with in Trump's second term. Things are happening far too quickly for the press to come up with any kind of coherent attack line. Stephen Colbert delivered a whole monologue that was clearly written with the expectation that the tariffs on Mexico would destroy the U.S. economy, only to acknowledge at the end of the monologue that actually the tariffs have already been suspended. So it's like he got handed a piece of paper mid-monologue informing him that none of the jokes work anymore. Watch.
These tariffs would raise prices in America for a whole lot of things. For example, Mexico provides us with 47% of our fruits, okay? I'm talking berries, lemons, limes, melons. Soon the only fruit we're gonna have left will be loop. Late this morning, just this morning, right? It was just this morning. Late this morning, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum agreed to rush 10,000 troops to the border to stop the flow of drugs. In return, the Mexican tariffs have been delayed by at least a month. Okay, that gives us 1 month to eat our weight in guacamole. In other words, nothing changes.
Now, when you're sitting through that Fruit Loops joke, a joke that, by the way, a whole team of comedy writers are in a room for hours coming up with material like that. And when you listen to that, it's difficult, if not impossible, to imagine a way that this monologue could get any worse. And then somehow it happens. Colbert has to announce that Trump's tariffs aren't going into effect because Mexico agreed to send 10,000 troops to control the border. And for context, there are currently roughly 15,000 Mexican troops at the border. So this is a substantial increase, almost 100% increase. And then after telling his audience about this, Colbert claims that, in his opinion, his joke still works because in a month it's possible the tariffs will go back into effect. And this is what happens when you really, really don't want to have to rewrite a script that you've already drafted, even when the script doesn't really make any sense anymore. You just tack on a note at the end saying, trust me, it still works. Now, to be fair, I'd probably try that sometime if I didn't have any amount of self-respect whatsoever. It'd make things a lot easier. I could just write a whole week's worth of monologues in advance, and then if they're outdated, I can just add a line at the end saying, trust me, everything I just said still makes sense. Trust me, bro. So this is what happens. This is what Trump is now repeatedly doing to his political enemies. He's preempting every single one of their outrage cycles. He's making things happen too quickly and with too many obvious benefits to this country for anyone on the left to keep up with it. And that includes our political enemies in Canada. Doug Ford, for example, runs the Canadian province of Ontario. He's a Canadian, quote-unquote, conservative, which basically means in Canadian terms that he's a liberal with maybe one or two fewer mental disorders. On Monday morning, Ford promised to retaliate against Trump by ripping up a $100 million Starlink contract. Apparently, he wanted to prevent rural populations in his province from accessing the internet as a way to, I guess, spite Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So he's punishing his own people to get at Elon Musk and Donald Trump. Watch.
Tomorrow, the LCBO, which sells nearly $1 billion worth of American beer, wine, spirits, and seltzers every year, will remove all U.S. products from its shelves and wholesale catalog. We've gone one step further. We'll be ripping up our contract with Elon Musk's Starlink. Ontario won't do business with people hell-bent on destroying our economy. Friends, there's no sugarcoating it. The coming days and weeks will be incredibly difficult.
Now, just a few hours later, everything changed. Like Mexico, Canada quickly caved. They announced that they would be appointing a new fentanyl czar to oversee a $1 billion plan to secure the border. They're also listing drug cartels as terrorist organizations, which they'll pursue as part of a $200 million intelligence directive. And as a result, just like in Mexico, the tariffs were suspended. This is a development that left Doug Ford in something of an awkward situation. After all, he had just ripped up the Starlink contract a few hours earlier, and now he has to put the pieces of that contract back together. As Canada's Global News reported, quote, Ford's team said Ontario's retaliatory measures would be rolled back. Asked if that meant that Starlink contract would proceed by Global News, a progressive conservative spokesperson replied, yes. So they went from destroying anything remotely related to Elon Musk to paying his company for internet access in the span of about 4 hours. Of course, Ford didn't go on television and tape the contract back together or anything like that. He had some unnamed spokesperson walk everything back for him, but the effect is the same. Now, putting it mildly, this is not the outcome that the left anticipated. It's not even the outcome that many Republicans anticipated. Mitch McConnell, for example, went on record warning that these tariffs were a terrible idea because Canada is our ally and the tariffs would destroy the economy for no reason, he claimed. Here he is.
What about tariffs against our allies?
It will drive the cost of everything up. In other words, it'll be paid for by American consumers. I mean, why would you want to get in a fight with your allies over this?
Now, just a few years ago in his first term in office, that Trump used tariffs on Mexico and Canada as leverage in order to renegotiate NAFTA for more favorable terms with the United States. We gained greater access to Canada's dairy markets, higher wages for auto workers, and higher requirements for vehicle parts to be made in North America in order for those vehicles to be exempt from tariffs. And as you may remember, those tariffs bothered a lot of people in Washington because Canada is supposedly our friend and ally, even though they have no military whatsoever and define their entire identity based on being not American. In fact, Canada's prime minister just went on CNN to explain that, in his view, Canada has no national identity whatsoever. It exists merely as the anti-United States. Watch.
President-elect Trump has been needling you a bit, calling you Governor Trudeau, talking about making Canada the 51st state. Did you have any interaction with him today?
No, not today. But that's not going to happen. Canadians are incredibly proud of being Canadian. One of the ways we define ourselves most easily is, well, we're not American. There is such a depth of pride that's not actually an issue.
One of the most pathetic things I've ever heard from the leader of a nation, and it's not even sporting to mock these people anymore. It's one of the most pitiful things you could have said in that particular moment. But he said it because it's true, apparently. That's how millions of Canadians, according to him, see themselves. They see themselves as not as Canadians, but as not American. But, in America, that's not how we define ourselves. If you ask anyone to define what it means to be American, you may get different answers, especially these days, but no one is going to say, oh, well, being American means being not Canadian. Now, we see ourselves as Americans with our own interests and to protect. And so that's exactly what Trump just did. And he did it very quickly. In response, all Canada could do is take American liquor off of their shelves for about 10 minutes, which is something that was happening in Canadian liquor stores, even though they'd already paid for it. So it was already in the store, and they were going through and getting rid of all the American liquor, so not only is it pointless because you already paid for it, but once again, you're punishing yourself because like all of the best whiskey in particular and bourbon is made in America. So now you have all you're left with is Canadian whiskey. It's a fate worse than death. But that's all they could do. And then pretend to rip up a Starlink contract. It was a pretty good trade for us, all things considered. And things are moving so quickly in the Trump administration that again, his opponents just don't have time to develop a counter-narrative. This may be the first presidency that's immune to the concept of a news cycle for this reason, because things are moving so fast. But just the other day, for example, Panama announced another major step towards restoring U.S. control of the Panama Canal. Quoting from Fox, Panama's president vowed Sunday to end a key development deal with China after meeting with Secretary of State Marco Rubio and after complaints from President Donald Trump that the Latin American country had ceded control over its critical shipping canal to Beijing. Panama will not renew a 2017 memorandum of understanding to join China's Belt and Road Global Development Initiative, and that Panama would instead look to work more closely with the United States. Separately, Bloomberg has reported that Panama is abandoning contracts with Hong Kong to give them access to the waterway. So we were told repeatedly that Trump would never accomplish anything by saying that we're going to retake the Panama Canal, and less than a month later, we are closer to retaking it than we've been in a very long time. Meanwhile, Colombia has completely caved on accepting illegal aliens back into their country, as we've previously discussed. Feels like a year ago at this point, but that was last week? You can understand why, faced with all these victories in very rapid succession, Democrats have no real response. They don't have time to come up with one. So instead, they're reduced to full-on panic. This was the scene outside the Treasury building yesterday.
He has broken the law time and time again. This cannot stand. He must be held accountable. He must be made to pay. We must enforce the law.
Lock him up. Lock him up. Lock him up.
We will not take this. We will fight back.
Fight back. Fight back.
And as I close out, because I know
and they be given full access to the Department of Treasury of the United States of America. We are at war.
Yes, those are members of Congress declaring that they are at war with the President of the United States. And the people need to fight this administration. You might remember that just a couple of years ago, language like that used to be a crime. You were committing an insurrection if you talk like that. But again, Democrats don't even hear themselves talking at this point. They can't regroup. They can't focus or deliver any kind of sustained rebuttal. They have nothing. What Trump has already demonstrated in his second term is that the United States is the most powerful nation on the planet. And when we start acting like it, other countries have no choice but to submit, follow the program. This is such a foreign concept to Democrats and the corporate press that they're just shocked by what's happened so far. Right when they come up with a talking point, it's already negated. And then we're on to the next topic, like taking over Gaza and firing everyone at USAID, for example. In other words, for the first time in memory, Republicans are setting the narrative in Washington. So that's what's happening. And they're doing it by carrying out the agenda that voters elected them to carry out, an agenda that puts this country before any others, which should not be a novel concept. It's certainly not any kind of secretive strategy cooked up by Project 2025 or whatever. Or maybe it is. I guess we can admit that now. But in any event, less than a month into Trump's term, it's obviously effective. And with every major concession we receive from a foreign country and every unhinged rally that Democrats stage in Washington, it's clear that none of Trump's enemies have any plan at the moment or any ability to stop whatever's coming next. Now let's get to our 5 headlines. You know what keeps me up at night? The state of our country. But at least I'm not tossing and turning because of my mattress anymore. That's right, folks. I'm talking about Helix Sleep. I never realized how badly I needed a new mattress until I finally got one. My Helix Sleep mattress actually supports my body the way that it should. I'm sleeping straight through the night for the first time in years. The best part is waking up actually feeling refreshed instead of dragging myself out of bed. What makes Helix different is that they don't just sell you a random mattress. They actually customize and match you with the perfect one for your body and your sleep style. Whether you're a side sleeper, a back sleeper, or somewhere in between, they've got you covered. Helix has a sleep quiz that'll match you with your perfect mattress in under 2 minutes so you can get better sleep and a better start to each day. Trust me, when you find the right match, you'll wonder how you ever slept on anything else. If you're ready to upgrade your sleep, Helix is currently offering a President's Day early access sale for my listeners. Go to helixsleep.com/Walsh to get 20% off site-wide plus 2 free dream pillows with any mattress purchase. That's helixsleep.com/Walsh for 20% off site-wide plus 2 free dream pillows with any mattress purchase. helixsleep.com/Walsh. All right, so I just alluded to Trump's proposal for Gaza. This is something that he floated yesterday as the blitzkrieg continues. And I think we have the clip of that. Let's play that.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it and be responsible for dismantling all of the dangerous unexploded bombs and other weapons on the site, level the site and get rid of the destroyed buildings, level it out, create an economic development that will supply unlimited numbers of jobs and housing for the people of the area. Do a real job, do something different. Just can't go back. If you go back, it's going to end up the same way it has for 100 years.
Okay, so here's the only thing I'll say about this. And you know that over the last 8 or 9 years, as Trump has been on the scene, I have not been a 4D chess type of person. You know, that's been the meme, you know, now for years, that the idea is that Trump's most loyal supporters, whenever Trump does something that they would otherwise disagree with, they'll claim that it's 4D chess, that it may seem like you disagree with it, but really there's something else going on below the surface. And very often, historically, that has just been grade A cope, is all that has been. So this is not the 4D chess meme when I say this. That it's clear, especially in Trump's second term, that there's a real strategy that we've seen, because we've seen it play out. We've seen it work. We just talked about it in the monologue. And I think that what we just heard there, recent history would indicate, is a strategy, a negotiating tactic. So what I'll say is that, personally, I have no interest in the United States actually taking ownership of Gaza, doing anything to rebuild its. We got plenty of places in America that need to be rebuilt. We've got towns in North Carolina still in ruins because of a hurricane. We've got Los Angeles that was just burned, in historic fires. So we've got plenty of rebuilding to do in America. I'm not interested in rebuilding some godforsaken strip of land in the Middle East. Not interested in that. Certainly not interested in spending any American lives or treasure building and then defending Gaza. Not interested. So the actual thing itself, I don't want to see happen. However, if the threat of the thing brings about a favorable result for the United States, then great. So I think that we have based on recent history, based on what we've seen happen now several times just over the last few weeks, we have many reasons to assume that this is a negotiating tactic. That Trump is throwing out this proposal as a way of putting the United States in the strongest possible negotiating position to then create a favorable result for the United States primarily, because that should be our primary concern. And it is Trump's primary concern. So I think that's what's happening here. It is not dissimilar to what's happened with Panama. Now, as we talked about, we know that Trump has seemingly floated the idea of potentially retaking the Panama Canal by force. Now, in that case, I think a stronger case could be made for actually doing that if it comes to it. But I also don't think that Trump is actually going to do that. I don't see that really happening. I don't think that there's any kind of plausible future where Trump is sending troops down to Panama to forcibly retake the Panama Canal. But what he's doing is he's putting that on the table and saying, look, we could do that. If it comes to it, we could. We don't want to, but we could. And when it comes to the Panama Canal, that strategy, floating something that, like the most extreme possible scenario that almost certainly won't happen, floating it, putting yourself in a strong negotiating position, and then with Panama Canal, it brought about, significant results almost instantly. You had Panama dropping contracts with China right away. It was like almost within seconds. And so I feel pretty confident that something similar is happening here, which is all a long way of saying that I think there's every reason to wait and see how this plays out. And when I say wait and see how it plays out, again, recent history tells us that doesn't necessarily mean that we have to wait 6 years. In the last few weeks, the results come about pretty quickly. And so that's how I'm looking at this, and let's see how it plays out. So there's been a lot of controversy after somebody named Darren Beattie was appointed to be Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs. And that seems like the kind of appointment that would not generate much controversy because nobody even knows what the Undersecretary for Public Diplomacy and Public Affairs does. Okay, you have never thought about that position in your life, neither have I. But this guy was appointed to that position by Trump, and it did generate controversy in this case because Darren Beattie has previously tweeted, quote unquote, controversial things like this. And this was a recent tweet, I think last year. He tweeted, "Competent white men must be in charge if we want things to work. Unfortunately, our entire national ideology is predicated on coddling the feelings of women and minorities and demoralizing competent white men." So a lot of outrage over that because he was then selected for this government post. And the problem with the outrage over these comments is that we all know that they would garner no outrage if you just subbed white men for people of color. So if he had said that competent people of color must be in charge and that we shouldn't coddle white men because it's demoralizing to people of color, if he said that, nobody would care. Leftists say that kind of thing every day. It is a completely mainstream point of view on the left. And as if to prove that point, Representative Jasmine Crockett, who, as we know, has the IQ of a beanbag chair, went on CNN to talk about this, talk about Darren Beattie and his comments. And in the process, she said this. Listen.
The coddling is for the white boys. That's what's happening right now. I am tired of the white tears. Listen, if you are competent, you are not concerned. When I walk into Congress every single day, you know why I don't feel a way and why you can't make me doubt who I am? Is because I know that I had to work 10 times as hard as they did just to get into the seat. When you look and you compare me to Marjorie Taylor Greene or me to Lauren Boebert, there is no comparison. And that is the life that we have always lived.
The coddling is for the white boys, she says. Not even white men. Couldn't even bring herself to call us men. Boys. Calling us boys. And she's tired of the white tears. Right. So, what if I listened to this ridiculous woman complain, and then I said that I've had enough of the coddling of black girls, and I'm tired of the black tears? What if I said that about Jasmine Crockett? What if I just said, I'm sick of these whining black girls and their black tears? What if I said that? Better yet, what if an elected representative of the United States government said it? What if a United States congressman, a white male United States congressman, said that about Jasmine Crockett? A white male member of Congress went on Fox News and said, stop coddling these black girls. I'm sick of the black tears. Well, we know what would happen. I mean, that person would be removed from Congress, probably arrested for a hate crime. Again, I'm not even exaggerating. So if you want to know who's actually coddled, well, this kind of shows you, doesn't it? Because Darren Beattie's comments made national news, dozens of headlines about it, and he's just a bureaucrat appointed to a position that most people have never heard of, and they don't even know what that person does. Jasmine Crockett is a United States congresswoman. The two comments were at least equally racially charged, though I would say Crockett's even more so. But, white tears, white boys, that's even more. That kind of rhetoric is more charged than what Darren Beattie said. But even if we put them on an equal playing field, the two people are not on an equal playing field. One is just a bureaucrat who, again, no one even knows who that person is or what that position is. And the other one's a congresswoman. But guess which of the two got all the attention and all the outrage and all the headlines? Well, we know. And, this is the thing. A lot of people on the right, this is what you have to understand. That a lot of people on the right are just simply done with the double standard. And when I say done with it, I mean, done with it means they're not just complaining about it anymore. What they're saying is, we're not going to respect that. We don't recognize the double standard. It doesn't exist for us anymore. Several decades of it has been more than enough. And so a lot of people are done with it. And so they're saying, okay, well, if those are the rules, we're just going to do that. Like, if you're allowed to talk that way, then that's how we're going to talk. That's it. Like, we just don't recognize when you say, oh, no, but you're not allowed to say those things. We've got a whole bunch of people, and I think an increasing number of people are saying, well, I don't, what do you mean I'm not allowed to? Like, no, she says it, I'm going to say it. That's it. And so when you hear about the rise of racism, the rise of hate, and we'll play, the NFL, as we know, we'll play this in a second, but the NFL has been on a courageous campaign against hate, the rising hate that they're like, what are they talking about? What do you mean rising hate? Well, some of that is just people on the right saying, listen, we're going to play by the same rules that the left plays by, whether you like it or not. Like, we're not asking for permission. So the scenario that I just described, the hypothetical, somebody saying, man, I'm tired of the black tears from these black girls. You're going to start hearing that kind of thing unironically more and more. And when you do, the media is going to panic and lament the rise of white supremacy or whatever, but all that's really happening is that the playing field is being evened out. The rules are being equally applied. So if we don't want to see that, if we don't want to hear white men using the same kind of language that black members of Congress use every damn day in this country, then the way to avoid that is for Jasmine Crockett and the Jasmine Crockett's of the world to be condemned harshly for their racism and held to a higher standard. That's the way, because what I'm saying is this, people of color, quote unquote, POC, are held to standards that are all the way down here. In particular, when it comes to racial conversations and like the kinds of things you're allowed to say about racial issues and members of other races. So the standards, if you are POC, the standards are all the way down here, almost non-existent. You could say almost anything you want about anything when it comes to that subject. The rules in place governing what they can and can't say about other races, those rules are very, very relaxed, to the point where there basically are none. Meanwhile, white people, especially white men, are held to this standard up here. Much higher. Much, much, much higher. There are many, 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 many more rules for what the white man is allowed to say. So that if a white man says something that the most prominent black people in the country say all the time, every single day, for the white man, those same statements make him essentially a Klansman. They make him a Nazi. So those are the two standards, okay? They're like this, way up here and way down here. Those are the standards. And what I'm saying is that one of two things is going to happen, right? Either the standards and rules for non-white men are going to come up here, right? That's one thing that could happen. You could take Jasmine Crockett, bring her up here and say, no. You can't get away with saying stuff like that. We would never accept it from any of your white male colleagues. We don't accept it from you. You disgusting bigot, you horrific, awful person, you Nazi, all the same stuff. So that could happen, raise those standards all the way up here. Or the other thing that's going to happen is that whether the media likes it or not, the standards for white men, the rules of what kind of language, and when I say rules, I don't mean actual laws govern, but just like what is considered acceptable standards of conduct in society, that's going to come down here. And then we're all going to be down here in this playing field where there basically aren't any, it's like, say whatever you want. Now, one of those two things is going to happen. That's what I'm telling you. And because this is not, it's been like this for decades and it's just not going to continue. It's just not. And the fact that somebody, even though it was a bureaucratic post, the fact that Darren Beattie said that about we need white men in charge. He got a position in Trump's government. And for a lot of people on the left in the media, they're horrified by that. Well, that's a pretty good sign that we're not doing this anymore. This thing, we're not doing it. Because we all know that if Darren Beattie was a black guy and he said the exact same thing but flipped the races, he could get any government position he wanted. So we're just not doing this. We are not doing it anymore. It's not going to happen. Now, here's what I would like to see happen. Because I'm telling you where this is headed. That's all I'm trying to tell you. What I'd personally like to see happen is a kind of meeting in the middle. Okay, I think the rules, the standards, and that's when I say rules, I mean standards. The standards for what is considered just acceptable in civilized society. I think that it's way, way too strict for the dastardly white man. And way too low for Jasmine Crockett. And so what I'd like to see is a kind of a meeting in the middle where everybody is held to a reasonable standard of conduct. I don't think that it should be socially acceptable to speak with the level of contempt that Jasmine Crockett used for members of another race. Not that it should be illegal, not that there should be any kind of legal penalties, but just it shouldn't be socially acceptable. In a civilized society, it shouldn't be socially acceptable. White tears, white boys, that's just full-on dripping racist contempt. And I don't think that should be socially acceptable. I don't want to see that in any direction from anybody. So what I would like to see is just like, that's it, just like a this, go up here and down here, just kind of a meeting in the middle, and everybody's held to the same standard, and it's a reasonable standard. But so I guess that's the third option. Everyone's down here, everyone's all the way up here, or everyone's in the middle. But it's not going to be what it's been for the last several decades is not going to continue. It's simply not. And like it or not, I think it's one thing the left is learning, that it's like, we're not asking your permission anymore. You don't get to decide this. You see? So I know that the racial double standard, I know you like it and you'd like for it to continue, but it's not going to. All right, well, I just alluded to it. I hope you're ready to be inspired. Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady have teamed up with the NFL to make a commercial about how hate is bad. And their point about hate, it's a pretty provocative point. Their point is that hate, well, it's just that. Hate is bad. It's actually bad. It's not good, you see. They're against hate. But all you people that are big fans of hate, they're not fans of it. They are not fans. And neither is the NFL. And so the NFL made this commercial with Tom Brady and Snoop Dogg. Let's watch.
I hate you because we're from different neighborhoods.
I hate you because you look different.
I hate you because I don't understand you.
I hate you because people I know hate you.
I hate you because I think you hate me.
Because I need someone to blame.
Because you talk different.
Because you act different.
Because you're just different. Man, I hate that things are so bad that we have to do a commercial about it.
Me too.
Wow. Stand up to hate. Says it right there. Very brave. Can I say, first of all, why is Snoop Dogg the most prominent and visible human on planet Earth? Snoop Dogg is everywhere. He's the closest a human can be to omnipresence. And I really don't get it. I feel like Hollywood, the media, professional sports, government, they're all conspiring together to shove Snoop Dogg in our faces. There's a huge, secretive Illuminati conspiracy that all centers around Snoop Dogg somehow. It all comes down to Snoop Dogg. The most powerful forces on earth are involved in a dark conspiracy to make us like Snoop Dogg. That's it. They're all meeting in their dark, smoky rooms and whispering, and you're wondering, like, what do they want to do? Do they have plans to conquer the world, to brainwash all of us, to release another COVID virus? I mean, yeah, all that, but why? I mean, the reason behind all of it is just to make us like Snoop Dogg. That's it. What does Snoop Dogg even do? What does he do? What's his 9 to 5 like? Can someone explain? When was the last time Snoop Dogg had a hit song? When was the last time you heard a Snoop Dogg song? A new one? Snoop Dogg has had, and this is probably going to be shocking to you because he's everywhere. You would assume that this guy has 75 number one hits. This guy has had 2 hits his whole career. He's 89 years old now and looks it, by the way. He's been on the scene for decades. He's had 2 hits. He had a hit in 1992 called Gin and Juice. that's a banger, as the kids would say. Let's be honest about it. And then there was Drop It Like It's Hot in 2004. And so that's two in the span of about 12 or 13 years. And none ever again, ever. Not a single one besides those two. And 20 years, it's been 20 years since his last hit. And he's now more famous than he's ever been for doing nothing. I don't understand it. You're not allowed to have a commercial without Snoop Dogg in it. It's like an FCC regulation. Verizon tried to have one commercial without Snoop Dogg 2 years ago. They got fined $80 billion. That actually happened. Look it up. What were we talking about? Right. Okay. Well, we got to stop hate. That's what we should be talking about. The Snoop Dogg thing that's a whole monologue right there, because we need to get to the bottom of that. I need to understand. Does he even have a great personality? What is it about him? But anyway, so we got to stop hate. And needless to say, ending hate is the most meaningless campaign you could ever launch. It means nothing. Stand up to hate. Okay? What does that mean, actually? How do I stand up to it? By saying that hate is bad? All right, well, after that's done, then, what's next? And also, is hate actually bad? This slogan on the screen, if you didn't see it listening to the audio podcast, there's a slogan came on the screen. It said, stand up to all hate. All hate. Really? Well, what does hate mean? Hate is an intense dislike or a strong disgust towards something or someone. That's hate. Really, hate means a desire to see something destroyed. If love is a desire to, is to will the good of the other, if that's what love is, then it stands to reason that hate is basically to will the destruction of another. And so my question is there nothing that should make us feel disgust? Is there nothing that we should want to see destroyed? What about drug cartels? Can we hate them? Can we want them to be destroyed? What about child abusers? Can we have a strong disgust and disdain for them? What about white supremacists? The 3 white supremacists in the world, are we allowed to hate? Because I'm pretty sure, I bet you the NFL and Snoop Dogg and Tom Brady would say, oh yeah, well, but then, not all hate. Stand up to all hate except those 3. You hate the hell out of them. But everyone else, don't hate. So, and this is not just semantics. Standing up to hate, being against hate, isn't just dumb because it's meaningless, but it's also dumb because it's not correct. It's not the correct way to live. Hate itself is not an objectively bad thing. We should hate things that are deserving of hate, and we should not hate things that are not deserving of it. That is the message. And hate is a part of love, right? You can't actually love without hating, because to love someone is to hate what threatens and harms that person. That's what loving means. So hate and love are basically 2 sides of the same coin. What happens, the problem is when the coin gets flipped upside down. It's when it gets inverted. It's when you're hating what you should love and loving what you should hate. That is the problem. But I think that message is, I guess, a little bit too subtle and nuanced for the great philosopher Snoop Dogg. And so we end up with this instead. Let's get to the comment section.
If you're a man, it's required that you grow a beard. Hey, we're the Sweet Baby Gang.
Success is not built on resolutions. Those are made to break. It's built on taking action and building unstoppable momentum. When it comes to optimizing your health span, living better and longer, certain things are non-negotiable. Quality sits at the top of that list. And in the world of performance-focused supplements, Momentous stands alone. Their commitment to NSF certification means every batch undergoes rigorous testing for heavy metals, harmful additives, and label accuracy. That's why they've earned the trust of all 32 NFL teams and leading collegiate sport dietitians nationwide. While other brands chase trends and flood the market with endless options, Momentous takes a different approach. They rely on research and expert guidance to focus on what truly matters, mastering the fundamentals with unwavering consistency, then tailoring supplementation to your specific goals. Speaking of fundamentals, protein and creatine form the cornerstone. Momentous sources CreaPure, the highest grade creatine monohydrate available, an essential supplement for both men and women seeking peak physical and cognitive performance. Ready to start living on purpose? Visit livemomentous.com and use code Walsh for 20% off your order today. Two hallmarks of every dictatorship: transparency and cutting wasteful spending. We truly are in a constitutional crisis. Exactly. Yeah. And we really can't overstate the transparency side of it, as you point out. Trump is easily the most transparent president in American history, without a close second. And I don't think that aspect is discussed enough or appreciated enough, just how transparent this guy is. That he'll tell you exactly what he's doing, why he wants to do it. He talks to he's already talked to the press more in 2 or 3 weeks than Biden did his entire 4 years. And a truly extreme level of transparency. I wonder what Matt's take is on the new Final Destination movie trailer. Well, I haven't seen it yet. And the reason I haven't watched it is that I'm just not prepared to witness the beauty and magnificence of what I'm sure is one of the great works of cinematic art of all time. And, so it won't shock you to learn that I'm highly anticipating the next Final Destination film. There have been, I think, 5 Final Destination films before this latest one that's coming out. And I'm just glad they're still making them. I mean, if you watch the first 5 films, which works out to about 7.5 hours of screen time, you get the sense that there's so much more story to tell. I watch all 7.5 hours, as I have so many times. I just watch them all in a row. And it's, I got a wife and kids, and they're like, what's Daddy doing? Oh, he's watching Final Destination again. And I just watch it all day. And because there's so many huge Final Destination fans out there, aren't there? I can't be the only one. So many people that if you ask them what's their favorite film, they'll say Final Destination. So it makes sense that they're making another one. People have been yearning for Final Destination 6 this whole time. But anyway, so when I watch all 7.5 hours, the thing I think to myself is, that's it? I need more. I need 7.5 more hours of this. And I've been waiting. Every day. Every day I've watched for 15 years. I think the last one came out 15 years ago. 15 years I've been, every day I wake up, I check my phone first thing to look to see if the new Final Destination is coming out. I've been every year, every day of every year. And finally it's here. So I could not be more excited. Not every child is like yours, Matt. Not all kids find something they love. That's great that you can entertain your children with archery. Not everyone can afford to give their children a skill. I've succeeded the no medicine route and changed the diet and have given my child time, and it's paying off. But to give this advice is to assume that it works for everyone. Not everyone can afford to give their children a skill. What? You might as well say that not everyone can afford to discipline their children or to love them. Giving your children skills, helping them develop skills is one of the most fundamental jobs of a parent. And if you don't do it, it's not because you couldn't afford it. It doesn't cost money. There's no entry. There's no entry fee for developing skills. Parents who are far poorer than you have managed to raise children who have skills. So, no, yes. I'm not saying it has to be archery. I'm just giving that as an example, something that's worked for my kids that they enjoy. It might not, but you need to help your children develop skills. And you cannot use the excuse that you don't have the money to do it. Matt, I was at a parent-teacher conference for my son earlier this year, and his teacher was discussing my son's attention problems. I've already told both my wife and the teacher that my son would never be medicated for ADHD. But the teacher was almost trying to convince us to get an ADHD diagnosis from a psychologist so that she could help him. She then told me that 7 kids in her class were diagnosed with ADHD and had recommended teaching adaptations. I said, wait a minute, how many kids are in your class? 16. So she apparently thought nothing of the fact that 50% of her class had ADHD. Well, yeah, she thinks nothing of it, along with many people in this country who think nothing of it. They haven't even asked the basic question that you seem to be asking here very astutely, which is, if ADHD is a disorder, why is it so common? Okay, if we notice that a certain set of behaviors is very common, doesn't that by definition mean that they are not disordered? Doesn't it mean that they are very much within the order of things? Like, in what sense are they disordered? What is the proper order? Who decided on it? And how does that person know that the ADHD kid is outside of it? You know. Take, Matt. ADHD meds changed my life. Stimulants are not psychotropic. They're essentially coffee with more positive effects and less negative effects. Being medicated for ADHD is associated with nearly normal prefrontal lobe development, while adults with ADHD who never medicated have noticeably underdeveloped prefrontal lobes. Medication for ADHD should absolutely not be a last resort. It should be the first, precisely because it's the most effective and helps with all the other treatment methods. Well, this is total, I mean, no offense, this is total insanity, everything you've just written. And your comment, the entire problem is just summed up in your comment, everything about it, including the fact that you're hopelessly deluded about what ADHD meds are. You're taking them. You have no idea what they are. And I'm going to assume it's partly you're lying to yourself and trying to justify things, but also it sounds like you're being lied to by your doctors, and I think that that happens a lot. Stimulants are absolutely psychotropic, and amphetamine is without a doubt a psychotropic drug. A psychotropic drug is a drug that acts on your mind, that alters your mind. That's what ADHD drugs do. Okay, they are ostensibly, supposedly supposed to be treating a mental disorder. Mental means of your mind. So if it's a drug that treats your mind, supposedly, it is psychotropic. That's the whole point. And if you give your kid ADHD drugs, you do have them on psychotropic drugs. If there seems to be something sort of innately unsettling about the idea of giving psychotropic drugs to an 8-year-old, let's say, well, yeah, exactly. But they are psychotropic. The bit about the prefrontal cortex, and amphetamines are safer than coffee, have less side effects, is just nonsense. I mean, that's insane. That's a crazy thing to say. It is not remotely true. And if you were told that by your doctor, he is lying to you. Get a new doctor. I don't know how else to put it. The bit about the prefrontal cortex, I always get these claims, well, it's shown in studies that this and that. Okay, well, send me the studies. I'll read them. I will read the studies. Send me whatever literature you supposedly have showing this about the prefrontal cortex. But I have to point out yet again that I see these comments about, well, it's easy, the ADHD is easily located in the brain. Yeah, well, why don't they diagnose it by looking at the brain? You ever asked yourself that question? So easy to see in the brain. It's so clear. And yet millions of kids are diagnosed with this disorder and given drugs, and no one ever looks at their brain. There is no brain scan done. You know, one of the most basic criteria for ADHD, you know what it is? Before a child is diagnosed ADHD, the doctor wants to know if the child's behavior causes problems at school. That is part of the diagnostic criteria for this disorder, is they want to know, does the behavior cause problems at school? Well, let me ask you this. If ADHD is a brain disorder, if it's a brain structure problem, then why in the hell are they asking whether it causes problems at school? Isn't that irrelevant? I mean, if this is a physical illness, then whether or not it causes problems in one context or another is irrelevant to whether the disease is happening or not. Okay, if you have cancer, no one is going to ask you, well, is this causing problems at school? It's irrelevant. Cancer is cancer, so we got to treat it. Whether it's causing problems right now is not the point. But my point is that it's not just, well, they want to know if it's causing problems to decide the treatment method. It's whether or not it counts as a disorder depends on whether it's causing problems. Okay, that is a social. That is and I use this phrase not very often for not very many things, but in this case, it is actually a social construct. ADHD is a social construct. Let's see. If ADHD isn't real, then why do ADHD meds, stimulants affect people with ADHD differently than people without it? Yeah, that's just not true. That's just not true. Stimulants can affect people differently, but this idea that in general people with ADHD react one way, people without it react totally differently, like that's two different camps, and that's nonsense. At best, it is a gross oversimplification, but it's actually just mostly nonsense. I have ADHD, and I completely am able to say that it's real, and it does have a big effect on my life considering the way that I am and how I've grown up with it. I tried meds one time, lost weight, was a different person. I do not recommend medication because your differences make you who you are. I love who I am with my ADHD because I think differently than others, and because sometimes my built-up energy turns into funny comments, funny jokes, or funny body movements. Well, you're hitting on something very important here, and this is really my fundamental point, which is that, yes, ADHD is real in the sense that people with these sets of behaviors and tendencies do exist. I know that. What you're describing is a personality type, okay? People with ADHD are people with a certain type of personality. These are people who think and act a certain way. And the medical industry has declared that these types of people just shouldn't exist, that a person should just not be that way. That's what they're saying. They look at ADHD, what the medical industry is saying is, well, yeah, they're describing your child's behavior and they're saying, well, he should not be that way. That's just not how a person should be. Says who? Says who? How do we determine that? So it's the medical industry declaring that it's just not legitimate for a person to think and act this way is what I disagree with. Who is to say that a person isn't supposed to have an ADHD personality? Well, we say that specifically because ADHD types struggle in modern public school setting, okay? Which they do. But is everyone supposed to thrive in a modern public school setting? Is modern public school setting, is it so fundamental and innate that if someone doesn't thrive, it means that they're mentally diseased? I know it would be easier if everybody thrived in a modern public school setting, but is everyone supposed to? Is it possible that you have people that just don't thrive in that setting? It doesn't really work for them as well as it does for others, but it's not because they're mentally disordered. It's just because they're different. Is that possible? Have we thought about that? It's funny because people are always like, well, you don't know what it's like to deal with ADHD. You don't know what it's like. Well, first of all, as I said yesterday, I have two boys that could easily be diagnosed with it if we wanted to pursue that, which we don't. Everybody in my life, family, doctors, everyone, they all know. I mean, it's me we're talking about. So they all know that these kinds of diagnoses, and especially drugs, are a non-starter for me. Don't even bring it up. Not going to happen. Not going to put my kids on these drugs. It will not happen. Literally over my dead body will it happen. It will not happen. So we have not pursued it. We're not going to do it. But I'm very familiar with, put it this way, with kids who have these tendencies. I am very, very familiar with it. And also, I know from my own brain, okay? I could also be diagnosed if I wanted to be. That was the case when I was a kid, too. I was a terrible student. I struggled greatly in school. I struggled in other areas of my life, even into adulthood. And, that's part of my bias, maybe, when it comes to this issue, is that when I hear people describe what it's like to have ADHD, and I listen to it, I go, oh, so you mean you're just a person? Isn't that just how people are? What do you mean? When someone's trying to very seriously, well, you don't know. Well, here's what my mind is like with ADHD. And I listen to it and I go, well, yeah, isn't that just a brain? Isn't that what brains do? Because I'm the exact same way. And so it's true that with an ADHD mind, if you want to call it that, you're going to struggle to succeed in certain areas of life and certain environments, especially in a public school setting. So you could try to take drugs and make that square peg fit into the round hole, or you can try to find environments, find something to do with your life that where having a, quote, ADHD mind is not a liability, but in fact an asset. That's one of the reasons why I got into a creative field. I know not everyone can do that. I'm not recommending everyone does, just like I don't recommend archery for every kid. I'm just using it as an example. And so for me, what I realize is that I got a mind that works a certain way, and I don't think it's a bad thing, objectively. I think that it could come in handy to work this way. So I get into a creative field. In the last 3 or 4 years, I've written, produced, and starred in 2 feature films. I do a daily podcast. We did a comedy court TV show, along with activism and taking care of 8 kids. We're either 6 kids, a family of 8. And I think part of the reason I'm able to do all that is because I have a brain that just is, different in that way. So I chose to not see it as a liability, but to see it as, this is how my brain works. I'm gonna use it. And I think that with our kids especially, that's what we should be looking to do. This is how your brain works. This is how you are. This is your personality. And how can we harness that? How can we use it? How can we see it as an asset, not a liability? That's my point. Okay. No matter where you're watching or listening right now, take a second and hit that follow button. It costs you nothing, but it makes a massive difference in fighting back against the algorithm that really, really doesn't want you to hear this. But if you want the full show uncensored, uninterrupted, and unshackled from big tech overlords, there's only one way to do that, by becoming a Daily Wire Plus member. As a member, you get unlimited access to our entire library of premium entertainment, including the culture-shaping documentary, What is Woman, and the hilariously offensive box office hit, Am I Racist? Go to dailywire.com/subscribe now and join the fight. You might think it's been a pretty great year or so for Elon Musk. His company SpaceX caught a rocket booster midair. His other company, Tesla, revealed a self-driving robo-taxi and an autonomous robot. Then there's Neuralink, allowing paralyzed people to control computers with their minds. Then he moved into the White House after restoring freedom of speech to social media using his other company, X. But all of these achievements, you may be surprised to learn, pale in comparison to the many accomplishments of a former bartender and current member of Congress named Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And that's why the other day, AOC put Elon Musk in his place. She delivered an extremely coherent and rational takedown of Musk, a takedown that doesn't suggest in the slightest that she's thinking about him all the time or has any kind of unusual preoccupation with him whatsoever, or might even have a kind of romantic infatuation with Elon Musk. Not at all. Now, admittedly, I'm not capable of capturing AOC's brilliant assessment with any kind of paraphrase, so I'll just play the clip for you, and here's what she had to say.
This dude is probably one of the most unintelligent billionaires I have ever met or seen or witnessed, which, you know, you can probably even glean that from watching these people on TV. Anyways, all of that is to say is that they don't do their homework. Clearly, like, they're putting 19-year-olds in at the Treasury. This dude is not smart. And the danger in the lack of intelligence and the lack of expertise that Elon has. I mean, this guy is one of the most morally vacant, but also just least knowledgeable about these systems that we really know of. But the point is that what that means is that they're going to hit a button, inevitably. They are going to hit a button and things can go sideways.
Now, at first glance, a clip like that is obviously pretty convincing. AOC comes across as extremely articulate throughout the whole thing, and as she's particularly articulate when she says that Elon Musk is the most unintelligent billionaire she's ever, quote, seen or witnessed. And you might think that that's a redundant phrase. You might think that seeing and witnessing are synonyms. So you don't need to say, the dumbest one I've seen or witnessed. It means the same thing. But then again, you're not AOC. You don't understand how words work. Not the way she does anyway. And strangely, though, when I looked at the comments of AOC's video, it seems like most people don't agree with my assessment. Here's one response, for example, quote, she's just mad that Elon won't date her and it drives her insane. And there's this one, which keeps it simple, writes, quote, she is dumb as F. Then scrolling down a little bit, I came across this one, quote, a complete dumbass is running circles around us is not really the own she thinks it is. Now, at this point, I have to admit, I stopped reading the comments. All these people are clearly in denial about AOC's intellectual ability to the point that it's turned them into cruel, misogynistic internet bullies. So I wanted to set the record straight by highlighting some of AOC's best moments, the most shining examples of her intellectual prowess over the years. Before you ever think of criticizing AOC again or suggesting that she's not as intelligent as the guy who catches rockets in midair, you need to watch the footage I'm about to show you. Elon Musk, you know, he's running multiple multi-billion-dollar companies. He's the most financially successful human in history. And while working to reform the U.S. government, he's also developing interplanetary spacecraft, which is to say, he cannot possibly compete with the formidable intellect of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So here, for example, is AOC demonstrating that unlike Elon Musk, she does her homework. She comes prepared with a high IQ and a lot of facts about whatever issue she's talking about. Watch.
But I am,
of course, the dynamic there in terms of geopolitics and the war in the Middle East is very different than people expressing their First Amendment right to protest.
Well, yes, but I also think that what people are starting to see, at least in the occupation of Palestine, is just an increasing crisis of humanitarian condition. And that to me is just where I tend to come from on this issue.
You use the term the occupation of Palestine. What did you mean by that?
I think what I meant is like the settlements that are increasing in some of these areas and places where Palestinians are experiencing difficulty in access to their housing and homes.
Do you think you can expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd also just, I am not the expert on geopolitics on this.
You know, she's being modest at the end there, like all geniuses are, but really, watching that clip, it's effortless. She clearly knows everything there is to know about the Middle East, and I don't even think she was reading from a cue card or a notebook or anything. And that came straight from upstairs. An occupation is when, I think what I mean is like the settlements that are increasing, I mean, in places where people are experiencing difficulty. Did you get that? Rewind the video if not. I mean, you're in the presence of greatness here. This woman is an intellectual titan. What about this gem in which AOC highlights her background in economics? She could teach a class at Harvard Business School tomorrow if she wanted to. Watch this.
We look at these figures and we say, oh, unemployment is low, everything is fine, right? Well, unemployment is low because everyone has 2 jobs.
Well, did you get that? The unemployment rate is low because everyone has 2 jobs. Makes perfect sense. You know, when you have 2 jobs, you basically count as 2 people with jobs. That's why the unemployment rate is currently negative 100%. Now, after this interview came out, some racist and misogynistic economics professors came out and disagreed with her. One in particular came out with this statement: whether someone has multiple jobs doesn't enter into the construction of the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate is calculated from a survey of individuals where each individual is classified as having a job, without a job, and on temporary layoff, or actively searching for work, or out of labor force, close quote. So that's just pure bigotry, obviously. AOC knows what she's talking about. Put aside the fact that the number of people who have 2 jobs is less than 5% and dropping year over year. AOC knows what she's talking about when it comes to economics. In fact, she also knows what she's talking about when it comes to the law. She's like a Renaissance woman. Whatever specialty you're talking about, she understands it like the back of her hand. Watch.
Is it your testimony today that you personally witnessed President Joe Biden commit a crime?
I believe the fact that he was sitting with me while I was putting together a business
Did you
deal,
witness the president commit a crime? Is it your testimony today?
Yes.
And what crime have you witnessed?
How much time do I have to go through it?
It is simple. You name the crime. Did you watch him steal something?
Corruption statutes, RICO and conspiracy.
What is it? What is the crime, sir?
You
specifically.
You asked me to answer the question. I answered the question.
No.
RICO, you're obviously not familiar with. Corruption statutes.
Excuse me, sir. RICO is not a crime. It is a category. What is the
It's a category
crime?
of crimes that you're then charged.
You have charges.
A long 100.
You have charges. Sir, please
name the exact statute under RICO?
Yes.
Well, it's funny. In this committee room, everyone's not here. There's over 8
All right, sir. I reclaim my
lawyers that went to law school.
Well, you heard it there. RICO is not a crime. Maybe she thought he was referring to like a guy from Latin America named Rico. I don't know. RICO was enacted by the Organized Crime Control Act, and yes, it includes criminal penalties for racketeering activity, but no, it's not a crime to violate RICO, according to AOC. All those RICO prosecutions of the mafia, of Bernie Madoff's associates, of Donald Trump and his aides in Georgia, all those are figments of your imagination. If you watch the news at any point in the last century, you might think all those RICO prosecutions happened, but that's because you don't understand the law like AOC does. Neither does Tom Homan, the new border czar. Watch as AOC educates Tom Homan on a little thing called asylum law.
What I'm saying, this is not the only paper where we've given the secretary numerous options to secure the border and save lives.
And so the recommendation of the many that you recommended family separation.
I recommended zero tolerance.
which includes family separation.
The same as is with every U.S. citizen parent gets arrested when they're with a child.
Zero tolerance was interpreted as the policy that separated children from their
If I get arrested for DUI and I have a young child in the car, I'm going to be separated. When I was a police officer in New York and I arrested a father for domestic violence, I separated that father
Mr.
from his
Holman,
family.
with all due respect, legal asylees are not charged with any crime.
When you're into the country illegally, it's violation 8 United States Code 1325.
Seeking asylum is legal.
If you want to seek asylum and go through the port of entry, do it the legal way. The Attorney General of the United States has made that clear.
Okay.
That's well, you know, another legal. She's a legal expert. So AOC is explaining here that as long as someone comes into this country and just says, "I'm seeking asylum," it's automatically not illegal. So if someone's an illegal immigrant and they snuck into the country, as soon as ICE shows up, all they have to say is asylum, and magically it's no longer illegal. That's her point. Now, at this point, you're probably saying, I get it, no more clips. AOC, clearly a savant, knows the law better than the lawmen. But I'm going to keep going because all you haters out there have left me with no choice. So let's continue. Did you know that it's possible to invent technologies that have already been invented? Well, it's true. You might have thought that the word invent means to create something that's never been created before, but you're wrong. And again, while you were sleeping in English class, AOC was in the library paging through the biggest dictionary she could get her hands on. Watch.
We can put so many people to work. We need to refit so many pipes. We need to relay roads. We need to rebuild schools. We need to invent technology that's never even been invented yet.
We need to invent technology that's never even been invented yet. Never even been invented. Did you get that? We cannot keep inventing things that have already been invented. That's not the way forward, is what AOC is trying to say. No, we need to invent stuff that's not invented. You see? We can't stay stuck in the past because, as AOC herself has warned us, the world is going to end in 12 years anyway. So we really got to keep going. Although, admittedly, she's been a little inconsistent on that particular point. Watch.
And we're like, the world is going to end in 12 years if we don't address climate change. And your biggest issue?
Because as I've said in the House Democratic Caucus, some of us are actually going to have to live on this planet in 50 years. And right now, what happens right now determines how bad it's going to be. And so this is real life, this is serious, and we need to govern like it.
So either the world's going to be over in a few years or it'll be around for a long time. Who's to say? That's how scary climate change is. The estimates are constantly changing because the science is always changing, and AOC, as a scientist, understands that very well. So I've gone through all these examples, and there are millions more, to demonstrate once and for all that AOC is far smarter than any other member of Congress, certainly far smarter than Elon Musk. What has Elon Musk ever done? He's trying to send humans to Mars? He's not even, to be real, send them to a moon of Jupiter if you really want to impress me. Mars? It's another planet. I'd play more clips, but honestly, you'd probably wouldn't understand them. That's because AOC is much more intelligent than any billionaire, especially Elon Musk. Again, an intellectual titan. She does her homework. Any functioning society would happily trade 10,000 Elon Musks for just one AOC. And that is why everyone questioning AOC's extremely high intelligence on the internet after she called Elon Musk an idiot, all of them are today canceled. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Have a great day. Godspeed.
President Trump takes Gaza. I don't know who saw that one coming. President Bukele in El Salvador offers to jail America's criminals. And Kanye West is back on Twitter with the good stuff. Check it out on The Michael Knowles Show.